You probably recognize this painting. We all do. It's the Mona Lisa. But why is this painting so famous? Is it because Leonardo da Vinci painted it because of her expression? Because art history demanded she was important? Not really. The reason the Mona Lisa became the Mona Lisa is because she was stolen. Leonardo likely began painting the Mona Lisa in 1503, probably in Florence, and may have continued refining it for years. Some historians believe he was still working on it as late as 1517, just 2 years before his death. Let's picture it. Florence, circa 1503. Leonardo began work on a portrait that at the time was just that, a portrait. The subject in question is generally believed to be Lisa del Giocondo, the wife of Florentine merchant Francesco del Giocondo. That's also where the Italian title La Gioconda comes from, a name tied both to her married name and to the idea of cheerfulness or joy. By the 1510s, Leonardo had left Italy and entered the orbit of the French king Francis I. He would move into the Clos Luce located next to the king's castle, where he remained until his death in 1519 at the age of 67. In 1518, the painting was sold to the French king by his pupil Salahi, where it remained in the chateau until the French Revolution. Then it was transferred into the Louvre. It even spent some time in Napoleon's private quarters before returning to the museum. While critics and artists admired it as a Renaissance masterpiece, the general public did not yet treat it like the sacred object it would later become. And so it hung there, undisturbed, not especially famous, and far from untouchable. Then it happened. Overnight, on the 21st of August 1911, she was gone. The Mona Lisa had been stolen. Her absence was first noticed by the painter Louis Bourreau, who had come to the Louvre to finish his painting of the Mona Lisa, only to find the wall empty. At first, he was merely disappointed. He asked the guard, Brigadier Barbadin, where's Mona Lisa? Being photographed, I suppose, the guard replied, unworried. This was the case for many works during that time. Photography took the art world by storm, and many paintings were regularly taken off to be photographed. So Bourreau returned at a later time, the wall still empty. He asked the guard again, Brigadier Papadin, how long does a woman need to have a picture taken? The day is wasted. Do me a favor, find out when she will return. The guard went to the photographers to ask when she's coming back. They told him nobody took her, at least not to the photography department. They recommended he checks the other rooms, perhaps she had been relocated. So Papadin checked the studios carefully. The Mona Lisa is nowhere to be found. At that point, he rushed to the director's office in a panic. Once he bursted through the door, he announced that the Mona Lisa was gone. With the museum's director away on vacation, the curator Georges Benedite had to act in his place. Benedite was not yet fully alarmed. He called the supervisors of the museum guards and had them search the place. He proceeded to visit the Salon Carré, checked out the photo studios, and questioned the staff. Lastly, he informed the chief of the Paris police personally. Louis Lepine, prefect of the scene, arrived at the museum along with the gendarmes. The whole place was blocked off, entrances and exits completely shut. The search continues to expand by numbers, by now employing an additional 60 officers to search the premises. The public was told there was a leak. It was crucial to find her quickly, or the whole thing would become a national scandal, but find her they did not. There were no leads anywhere. The thieves could have been long gone. The Louvre was closed, the police flooded the museum, and the French authorities tightened border inspections, searching trains, ships, and vehicles for any sign of the missing painting. The Mona Lisa missing from the Louvre. An extraordinary piece of news, one that people at first refused to believe, spread through Paris this afternoon. The Mona Lisa, Leonardo da Vinci's immortal masterpiece, the pride of the Salon Carré at the Louvre, has disappeared. As one can imagine, the emotion at the Louvre is considerable. All the curators and all the department heads present in Paris are gathered in the museum galleries where they are carrying out an initial inquiry into this dismaying news. At 2:45, the prefect of police gave the order to close the Louvre Museum, which was then completely evacuated. The detectives at the Sûreté are telling onlookers that it is merely a burst water pipe. Searches were immediately undertaken inside the museum, for it was supposed that the painting had simply been moved in order to be photographed. According to the rumor circulating, it is supposed that the disappearance of the Mona Lisa is due to some practical joker. It seems impossible, in fact, to derive any commercial gain from the sale of a painting so universally known. This early article tackling the topic of Mona Lisa's disappearance sets the tone for nearly everything that follows. She was framed as extraordinary, universally important, and almost immediately wrapped in myth. Once the museum opened again, people flocked over to see the empty space where it once hung. But the media didn't stop with the French. No, it went global. Come sia stato possibile l'impossibile, cioè il furto da Louvre del ritratto di Mona Lisa del Giocondo di Leonardo. Das herrlichste Bild Leonardos Mona Lisa aus dem Louvre gestohlen. Robo sensacional de un cuadro famoso. Famous picture vanishes. Famous painting Mona Lisa stolen. World's most famous painting disappears. Paris in a ferment. As the narrative grew and grew, the story of the Mona Lisa became ubiquitous. People from all over the world had learned about her importance. The Mona Lisa, as we know today, had been born. Now, of course, we just had to get her back. As the hunt for the Mona Lisa reached a stalemate, the French police grew desperate. As real leads began drying up, the idea that Pablo Picasso might somehow be involved became irresistible. In fact, there was enough stranger overlap to make the suspicion seem plausible. Pablo Picasso and his friend, poet, essayist and whatnot, Guillaume Apollinaire, were leaders of a group known as the Wild Men of Paris. Though from the eyes of the police, they were just artistic delinquents. One day, something caught their attention. Within a poem by Apollinaire, there was a character by the name of Baron Ignace d'Ormezon, who happens to share the same alias as the notorious Louvre thief who stole many artifacts multiple times. This person would in fact be Apollinaire's associate, Belgian Honoré Joseph Géry Piré, and he loved to steal. In one such theft, he stole 2 sculpted heads that he sold to Pablo Picasso for a mere 50 francs, which he stored in his wardrobe for the time being. So when the Mona Lisa vanished in 1911, Apollinaire panicked. Suddenly having souvenirs from the Louvre wasn't a bohemian quirk. Thus the 2 men stuffed the stone heads into a suitcase and crept towards the scene at night. Their plan? Drown the evidence. But as soon as they stood on the bridge, looking at the black swirling water, they froze. What their reasoning was is unsure, but whatever the case was, they couldn't bring themselves to throw the suitcase. They turned back, scurrying through the alleys like the criminals they were. On September 7th, the law finally caught up. Apollinaire was hauled off to Les Santé prison. The investigators were aggressive with him as they had a lead. A man had written to the press under the pseudonym Baron Ignace d'Ormezon, bragging about how easy it was to rob the Louvre, the same name appearing in Apollinaire's poem. They squeezed the poet, threatening him with multiple felony charges. Under the crushing weight of the interrogation, Apollinaire's resolve shattered. He confessed. The Baron was Piré. But the rabbit hole went deeper. Apollinaire admitted he had actually helped Piré escape, buying him a train ticket to Marseille and urging him to vanish. Unbeknownst to Apollinaire, Piré began selling anonymous, taunting letters to the press, calling himself the Baron. Caught in a web of his own making, a broken Apollinaire finally gave up his last secret: Pablo Picasso. On September 9th, Picasso was taken into custody and brought to the Palais de Justice. The atmosphere was suffocating. When Picasso was brought into the courtroom, he saw Apollinaire, pale, weeping, and physically ruined by his time in the cell. Then came the moment that would haunt their friendship forever. Faced with the judge and the threat of being sent back to Spain, Picasso's courage failed him. When asked if he knew the man sitting across from him, Picasso famously sobbed that he had never seen him before. It was a staggering lie. Both men eventually confessed to the possession of the heads, but the judge saw them for what they were: pretentious artists, not master thieves. They were exonerated of the Mona Lisa theft and released with a stern warning. The Bohemian connection had turned out to be a dead end. The press moved on, the public's frenzy cooled into a dull ache, and the space on the Louvre wall where the Mona Lisa once hung remained a haunting, empty rectangle of dust. For the next 2 years, the trail went cold. The most famous painting in the world was simply gone. The whole ordeal would end just 2 years after the painting was first stolen. The thief finally began making his move. He had kept the painting hidden in his apartment for 2 full years. He then decided it was time to sell the Mona Lisa. The thief would reach out to Giovanni Poggi, director of the Uffizi Gallery in Florence. The culprit was an ex-Louvre employee, an Italian patriot by the name of Vincenzo Perugia, who thought that the painting should be returned to its home country. He was quickly arrested after trying to make the sale. The painting itself was exhibited in the Uffizi Gallery for a couple of weeks before it made its way back to the Louvre Museum, where it hangs today. But how did he steal the painting in the first place? Perugia stole the painting in the midst of night on the 21st of August 1911. He was also the one who constructed the painting's glass case. He hid in a closet past closing time, snuck the painting under his coat, and simply walked out with it. Perugia himself was only sentenced to 6 months in prison and was cheered on for his patriotism. And that is more or less where the story ends. Anticlimactic, maybe, but by then the damage, or perhaps the magic, had already been done. You can argue over whether this is the sole reason the Mona Lisa became what she is today. I personally tend to believe this was the catalyst that made people perceive the painting as something else. I might not be the biggest fan of the Mona Lisa, but it more than earned its place as one of the most influential paintings ever made. So there we have it, the odd history that is Mona Lisa. From a portrait of unknown date to the global sensation caused by a theft. Whether or not her fame came from her artistic beauty or from her fascinating history is up to you to decide. And this has been Win. Liking this video and subscribing to my channel would make a monumental impact. I'm still quite new at this, so any comment is appreciated. But anyways, bye bye.